CoT's base of operations is right here at thecounciloftime.com. CoT has no other outlet or venue. These are other folks who will rebroadcast, like DailyExcellence, who is authorized to rebroadcast by way of video.
Hi, Sarah. How you doing today?
All right. Doing great, Mike. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Good to be on the show today.
It's great to have you today. A lot going on. It's great to have you here. It's quite amazing, the events that go on every day. Sometimes I think about it from time to time. And I often wonder, just, God's got it all under his control. That's the main thing. And that's what gives me the peace and the comfort that I have with Christ, that no matter what happens every day, we're on the winning team. And he's got it all under control. Isn't that right?
Amen. He certainly does. He certainly does, Pastor Paul.
Amen. Mike, I want to talk about two subjects. One, we're going to talk about TX-68 asteroid, and we also want to talk about all this military movement that's going on, including rumors that the United States on the verge of maybe supporting an invasion with Turkey and Syria, and that might be our plan B. Who knows? But let's talk about the asteroid TX-68. We discussed it last time he was on the show, and I believe you had said that this asteroid may go by, or you announced somewhere like 9,000 to 10,000 miles from the Earth. At that time, NASA was still saying about 1.3 lunar distance, about 300,000 miles. Now NASA is changing the date, but their date is different than the European Space Agency's date. And they say now it's going to come within 19,000 miles or something like that. Mike, can you tell me how in the world do we have a change of date and a change of, how does this happen?
Well, the European Space Agency is a little more transparent than NASA is. And you have to remember that just recently, NASA had actually employed their Planetary Defense Office. And so there's going to be a disconnect between the European Space Agency and NASA concerning data. Both have pretty healthy investments in space concerning probes and this, that, and the other. But our country, unfortunately, the USA, often has restrictions on what they can actually tell people. The European Space Agency is a little different. They're a little different concerning information. They're forthcoming in a few areas where we are not. And so that's why their data differs, is because the European Space Agency tracks a little closer, while we don't let the information out right away, so it can lag behind. I would say that ultimately they will be in full agreement in the end, but we're going to lag in information due to policy. There are just certain things you can't put out.
And you've said before that whatever information we're getting from NASA generally is information they've known 30 years ago, and that the technology that they have, that we get, every bit of new technology we get to use in the public is actually 30 years old, and that the United States government, military, as well as maybe the space agency is way ahead of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. For example, in 1940s, we had a periodic table, but there was another periodic table that some of the scientists in the government used. Of course, they recruit from MIT and various universities, but there were an addition of 203 elements, and they're just now being released. They knew about these elements back then. They're just now being released, and so as of late, in the last 5-10 years, people are astounded by the new types of metals that are being added to the periodic table. However, they're old. The reasoning behind that is it's always a good practice to, when you discover something or when you develop something, to master it first. After you have mastered it and the properties of it, you know what it can and can't do, then release it to the public for just out of curiosity's sake, and let them experiment with it, because you know all the properties. And also, we have to keep in mind that what we put out to the public, the enemy also knows. And if they know about these exotic materials that the USA has hold of, they would then begin to pursue things like Russia did. Russia found a metal in the 1940s that actually can heal itself, so to speak. The nucleus of that metal rearranges based upon what it's in proximity to. So things like that have been discovered. We are way behind. I would say in most cases of common things, we're 30 years behind. But there are a lot of cases where we're out. I'd say right now we are far behind due to the advances in technology, which are exponential in nature.
Okay, Mike, as we're talking about TX68, do you still feel that TX68 is going to, how close do you think it's going to be, and your understanding and maybe calculations, how close will it be, and what day is it going by? I can't even figure out which date to put on the YouTube video. I'm not sure what day it is.
Well, have you noticed the debris that is arriving prior to it?
Yes.
We've had, 3 impacts in the Atlantic Ocean. They probably didn't tell anybody unless people saw it themselves. There have been some other objects that have been not tracked, not reported, but airline pilots did report these things. Russia also had some incidences, 2 atmospheric explosions. And then I believe that last night there was another atmospheric explosion too. So with this object comes trash. In most cases, anything that's beyond 50 feet normally has something else accompanying it. I do believe that this 2013 TX68 is fractured, which means it's a portion of something larger. I do believe that because there is a caution date in 2017 of a real potential impact from 2013 TX68, and that's going to be based on its passing our sun, what happens to it when it passes the sun. Its sister element, no one's going to look at, they're not going to report it. So while everybody's focused on TX68, there is the other fracture of this element is also going to go around the sun. And so that's why there's blacked out data with a lot of people are noticing with SDO and so on and so forth.
So you're saying, wait a minute, Mike.
Those objects don't bring up a concern.
So, Mike, let me get this straight because I was not aware of this. You're saying that this is just a fraction of something much bigger. It's going by here in the next few days, TX68, but the real story is what's coming in the year 2017, something much bigger and more. And I never heard of it. I mean, does it have a name? Do you know the name of this object?
Right now, the designation for the 2017 object is TX68, 2013 TX68, but they're not reporting the fractured side of it. And the reason why is because it has a real potential of impact somewhere around May of next year. It has a real close potential of impact, and they're watching the orbits very closely. There's a common rule with NASA and with the European Space Agency and anything observed in space. When they begin to track objects like this and they lock onto it, you can almost be guaranteed there's something else to this object. And what they give to the public is something that won't hurt you. Everybody should remember that. If they are speaking about an object, it's not going to actually hurt the Earth. But what will hurt the Earth, they won't speak about. TX68 was not discovered in 2013. It was discovered long before 2013. But it's a fractured body in space. Now, some of the weaponry and some of the defenses, and that's going to be a coordination of the PETCO system or the Planetary Defense Coordination Office that's going to handle meteorites and things because people are going to see more and more and more. They're going to begin to coordinate with strategic forces on how to actually fragment further these objects. It's going to become quite real and quite dangerous.
So, Mike, is that why we're hearing that Russia announced that they're starting to turn their intercontinental ballistic missiles and rockets toward asteroids in space? that they're preparing to actually fire nukes into space to try to blow up incoming asteroids? Is it because they already know what is coming, when it's coming, and how big it is and how big of a threat it is? And so they've announced that they're going to try to pick off. They've told us about Apophis, which is going to come by the Earth in the year 2029. It won't hit us, but then it comes back 7 years later in the year 2036. I believe on Friday the 13th, April the 13th, 2036. If I'm right, it will come back. And when it does, it's going to be so dangerously close that Russia's preparing to shoot this thing and blow it up with nukes. Now, they know, they're telling us about that one. Obviously, what are they not telling us? And is the United States preparing to do the same type of thing, working with the Russians on this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Pastor, because most of your forces, there's a scientific side of forces and planetary defense coordination, of which all nations do work together. It's almost, it's very strange. It's like the scientific community, they are one unit and they work together for the sake of the planet. And, but otherwise people see the political moves and so forth and so on, and they count them as enemies. But they're working in tandem. And to say the threat is real or not at this point is somewhat irresponsible. But let's just say that they're not investing this money for nothing, because in the end they want to save themselves. If a person can keep focused and understand something, they're not going to blow themselves up.
No.
Right? Their ultimate goal is to save themselves, which is, it's a basic instinct of humanity when they're born. So they're going to do everything to stop any type of destructive force coming upon this world. Right? They're going to stop it. They're not going to impose it. And so, yes, they are. Russia is preparing. In fact, they're leading the charge with Germany, the ones that they purportedly hate tactically, but they're leading the charge with the European Space Agency to do what they had already done. Again, you may not know this, but they actually launched 2 missiles towards Elenin. I wonder if anybody was aware of that.
No, I am not.
They did have an impact on that.
They did.
And they measured the outcome of that too. So, yeah,
so you're saying,
with the element.
So you're saying Russia did fire 2 rockets, nuclear. Were they nuclear?
Now, this was the European Space Agency.
Oh, okay.
Launched 2 nuclear warheads, 2 very large nuclear warheads at Elenin.
Did they hit it?
That was the European Space Agency.
Did they hit it?
Yes, they did. They absolutely did. And it, too, was also fragmented. So, which means you were seeing an object, but they didn't tell anybody about the accompanying object with it.
This is amazing. I mean, I covered Comet Elenin. I was keeping track of it, talking about it because of its time, that the days that it was going to go by the Earth to be its closest point to the Earth. It was during one of the Jewish feast days. I found that fascinating. But I had no idea that the European Space Agency had fired 2 nuclear warheads and hit Comet Elenin. So they fractured it, I take it.
Well, it was yeah, they hit a portion of that, and it fragmented. I remember that BP Earthwatch was watching the nucleus of that thing, and then he began to see it spread out.
Yeah, I remember that.
They didn't tell anybody they hit it. And because of its speed, it held together, and nobody had an explanation as to why it was spreading apart like that. But he really did solve something, but nobody actually conveyed to anybody the reasons behind that, because a comet doesn't normally do that by itself.
Right. I remember it. I remember we were watching it. We knew it was going to go by. It was going to do the perihelion around the sun somewhere close to Thanksgiving. This thing swung around. It was headed toward the Earth. It was one element. It might have had some space junk following it, but it was one element. And then all of a sudden, at some point, it just broke apart into what looked like 2 or 3 pieces, and it's like, okay, what happened there? Well, we kept hearing NASA say, well, it was when it come around the sun, there was just too much heat, it couldn't hold up, it started to come apart. But you're saying, no. It was hit with 2 nuclear warheads, and it fragmented. It caused it to fragment right there in space.
Yeah, because when an object from space gets near the sun, gases do begin to emit, to erupt, so to speak, which causes Elenin had a long tail.
Right.
So the gases were already coming out of this thing, and as they got closer, right, those objects began to expand as though something internally exploded in this thing, right, and it was fractured into multiple pieces. Some pretty large pieces went around the sun, and of course they didn't tell anybody. Now they did publish it after the fact. It is published. It's just not. You have to go find it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just volunteer and tell anybody about it. It is published. So that's what happened with that. But this year, Pastor Paul, there's a reason they have a Planetary Defense Coordination Office in NASA, and it's because there are going to be too many sightings of potentially hazardous objects that are going to really frighten people, and they need to give an answer to the public as to why all these objects are coming in.
Okay, yeah, they're going, and they need to tell us things like the Russians are working close with the Germans on how to deal with incoming asteroids and meteorites, especially, or asteroids or even comets that they think could be a threat to the Earth. I think that, because a lot of times what happens is we have this, we're constantly being put on notice of the tensions between these nations. And that's where I'm going to go with you next, is to the military movement. But what I did not realize it, and I mean, look, it was just never really reported in the national news that there was an actual impact in space by 2 European space agencies hit Comet Elenin with 2 nuclear missiles. That just wasn't really, like you said, you got to dig it out, but it was not really widely known. But it does make sense why it broke apart into small pieces or smaller pieces. I remember that. Let me ask you a question. So do you think, for instance, the asteroid that exploded, the meteorite that exploded over Siberia 3 years ago over Russia, and it was a lot smaller than this TX-68. And when it exploded, it had the equivalent to 500,000 tons of TNT. And that's why people were injured and buildings were damaged. And even though it was not even near the city, it still had that big of a shock wave. We didn't even know it was coming. Did NASA know it was coming?
Well, that day, actually, you remember that day that trash was actually following this thing, but it came from the wrong area. In other words, it was not traveling with, there was a object that had just passed, came close to the Earth. This one came from a different direction that same exact day, and then it exploded. So what we see here is that when these objects are passing, the orbit of one object that is known by people who track these things is one thing, but it's always accompanied by smaller fragments that can do the most damage. They did see it, but it was too late. It is true that we can monitor a great many things. NORAD is still operational.
Right.
The master facility has been moved, of course, but they can track everything. But that was over Russian airspace. That Russia was angry because they thought we did it until they found out that they were warned, right? And there was there could have been an intercept to that object. There could have been a real intercept to that object.
Here's where I'm going.
So yes, we can see things like that.
Okay.
What is the benefit?
Well, here's where I'm going. All right. They can see things. They can fire nukes. They can hit asteroids and comets. They know there's some big ones coming. They're kind of, letting us know about. But they're building underground cities, Mike. They're building them under Russia. They're building them in China. They're building them in Germany. They're building them in the United States. They're building them all over the world. Your modern nations are preparing for something. Now, I can read in the Bible, and I understand what it says in Revelation 6, that they're going to, the elite And that's really what it talks about. The chief captains, mighty men, rich men, bondmen. It's really talking about the elitists. They're preparing for something, and they're all doing it. What are they preparing for? Well, they are going to see something coming upon the earth. We know that Jesus already told us the heavens are going to be shaken. Jesus said men are going to fall dead of heart attacks because of fear for what's coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven is going to shake. So they're already building bunkers and hiding water and supplies and preparing for something. Do they know what this something is? And is 2017, is that what they're preparing for, or is it down the road somewhere?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, they know what they're preparing for. Even looking at the scriptures, it says men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth, which means if they're looking after, what they're doing is perceiving things that are in fact going to impact the earth.
Exactly.
And the information is so incredibly terrible and unavoidable that even entertaining the thought of what is coming again upon this earth is terrifying. And yes, they will seek this. They don't have Christ, so they have no hope of a future. And it's very difficult for us to think that way because we have a hope of Christ, but they don't. And so they will hide themselves, and they're making these plans, and they've been doing it for a very, very long time. But it's a very good question, because everything that we're seeing in the world is under the guise of to keep people distracted for the most part. In other words, they knew what was happening a long time ago. They pay archaeologists to dig up everything around the globe. They're greedy about the pieces that they find because they're trying to put a story together. What they have found so far is very intimidating to them because they can't change it. That's why global warming is really a farce. It's a fake thing. Global warming it's one of the natural cycles of Earth. It really is.
Right.
And you were speaking about cosmic particles, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the atmospheric compression event that we're having, which is causing more and more density to be added to the ionosphere and the thermosphere. Now, with that, you're going to have a heating process, right? Because it's 1,340 degrees up there, and the more molecules you have in there, the hotter it's going to get. And so the Earth is really going to begin to heat up and compress because the atmosphere is heavier, which is going to make people's bones hurt.
Is that why?
And then,
is that why I wake up in the morning? I mean, I know I'm getting older, but I'm just saying I must be getting older fast, because a lot of mornings you get up, and a lot of times through the day, your bones are hurting. I mean, I understand arthritis. I understand how that works, and I got it, and I understand it. But at the same time, it seems like there's days, Mike. Seriously, there are certain days where either there's a solar flare, or are we getting hit with some kind of cosmic rays, or some kind of heavy atmospheric shoving down? I mean, what's going on here? It hurts.
Yeah, it's so obvious right now. They're having a difficult time covering this up, Pastor Paul. Our solar system within itself, the sun provides a shield for our solar system, just so everybody understands. And it's constantly emitting, right, radiation, which causes a shield around our solar system because cosmic rays are pressing in. Well, that's the bow shock that hits the bubble around our solar system. Well, guess what's happening to the bow shock? It's vanishing. It's disappearing because the sun goes through a cycle where it lets down the entire solar system shield. And then you have cosmic rays coming in. And here's what cosmic rays can do, just so people can understand. Cosmic rays, these exotic particles, the Earth normally does not have to deal with. When the wrong types come in, they can change matter. They can cause materials to be volatile, explosions, things of that nature. The electromagnetic forces can stop internal, like if a person has let's just say a false or a pacemaker or something like that, those electromagnetic forces can actually begin to affect them. Your bone density can begin to change while our molecules begin to change. Everything starts to break down through these particles. And what they have found is this: there are certain exotic particles that can actually cause other atoms to rearrange themselves down at the base of the nucleus. And so you're really looking at a transformation of things with this type of energy coming in. This happens about every 120,000 years. This is a calculation they did. It's because you have this same episode that happens over and over and over again. So it's like a sun cycle. The sun goes through this cycle where it emits nothing. It's like somebody turns it off.
Right.
And then the bow shock disappears. All this stuff comes into our atmosphere, and it's momentary, but it's dangerous.
Wow.
Because then you have increased sickness and radiation and things of that nature. This also will increase the pressure in the atmosphere, and people's bones will begin to hurt. The body has an effect to these pressure changes, which is why in space, when they're in space, they don't even feel their bones. You get back on Earth, astronauts report their bones hurt all the time because there's a difference in pressure. Well, we're feeling it, in the Earth through that atmospheric compression event. And so, it poses a problem. And this is why the second wave in 303 days is also something I'm watching very closely.
Yeah, so 303, I hear you. I was going to ask you about the second wave. We knew it was sometime around December. You're saying we're right now 303 days away from the second wave, and it's going to be stronger than the first one, Mike?
About 500 times stronger.
What's going to, the first one, we've seen an uptick in volcanoes, uptick in earthquakes over 6.0. In the months leading up to the second one, what are we going to see on the Earth before this second wave hits in 303 days?
This time, we're really going to see crustal displacement at a new level. At a new level. Pastor Paul, this year, I can say this with, I'll just put myself out there with 100% certainty. This is going to be the year of real change that nobody wants. This is going to be a year where things are so unexpected that people are going to get nervous. They're going to get very nervous. But crustal displacement is going to be an issue.
Tell me about, wait a minute.
Volcanoes.
I hate to interrupt you there, but crustal displacement, what does that mean in layman's terms?
Well, when you have earthquakes, deep or shallow, the crust of the Earth will expand or contract, and then you have plates slapped over another, right?
Right.
So if the crustal displacement, though, these are new cracks that will begin to form, brand new cracks.
Are you serious? Okay.
Yes, as this energy comes in, the core of the Earth is going to begin to heat too much, right? It's going to heat too much. This is going to force liquid rock to begin to force things apart, because it's going to find an opening. So the Earth is expanding from within, right? And being pressed upon from without. And all these forces, something has to give. And so due to density issues in the depth of the Earth, we know that certain portions of the crust of the Earth will begin to crack. New cracks are going to form. There will be gas releases like we never experienced before, which is very, this is something that's on the minds of those in America as far as FEMA goes, and I'll tell you why. We have a lot of gas lines in America, certainly on the East Coast. Yeah. And if a crustal displacement event happens on the East Coast, and we already have an ancient infrastructure concerning gas lines, they're barely holding New York together and Chicago and places like that. You're looking at ruptures that you can't control. Here's going to be a sign of that, Pastor. You're going to see a rodent migration like you never saw before. People are going to have issues and problems with rodents. They're going to begin to migrate out of the areas that have ignited underneath the ground. Coal fires will begin to start because magma is pouring up in new places. Right. They've already evacuated a few neighborhoods already on the East Coast, or let's just say a few communities have been evacuated because the ground is on fire underneath the earth. So, and very poisonous gases are being released.
So will there be a super volcano, potentially erupting from this crustal displacement, this moving magma?
I believe that Yellowstone is not going to blow like everybody says.
Okay.
I believe that Yellowstone and others like it will begin to fix a lot of gases. I believe its cycle is going to be disrupted, and it will begin to spread, right? I don't believe it's going to explode like everybody predicted, but I know that gases will spew. The pressure is just entirely too much. It really is entirely too much. This is going to change, and this is not good, by the way, because mostly under the ocean, right, in the southern hemisphere, there's volcanic activity that nobody has ever seen before. It's just not, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, I understand.
It's what it is. And you've got 500-degree temperatures coming out from the bottom of the ocean, and these gases are escaping, and the water's heating up, which is going to wreak havoc concerning weather, as the weather begins to change. But we're going to see a lot of releases of gases and magma, and it's going to begin to really disrupt some things. It really is. And it's not something one's going to look forward to. It's something we're going to have to deal with. This is also going to continue to dry up some of the natural water that we have, right? And then you're going to see it's just not going to be good, because that water will begin to evaporate, and then we have a real problem. Nobody's impacted. Nobody thinks about these things until it hits at their front door. These things are not distant. These things are a worry. They're a real worry. And they're setting up forces to handle the fallout of this too.
Well, this and we wanted to say, I don't know how many people are at new live stream right now, but we have went over 1,000 people watching live just on YouTube alone. And folks are listening everywhere, all over the place. I think it's great. 152 have called on the phone. I think it's great that people are starting to understand. People know there's something happening. And why are the elitists, the global elitists, digging underground cities to prepare to preserve themselves? And when you go to the Bible, folks, when Jesus says people are going to fall dead of heart attacks because of what's coming upon the earth, and they're going to the global elitists are going to run to the rocks and mountains to try to hide. And we're seeing it happen before our very eyes. It should help us understand that we're living in a days that the Bible prophesied would come to pass in the end times. Let's shift gears. We could talk about this forever. We got to go to the military movement that's going on around the world, Mike. And I know right now that Turkey and Saudi Arabia have formed a Sunni coalition with now 20 nations, in which they have somewhere between 150 and 250,000 troops, and they're preparing for a potential invasion of northern Syria to preserve those rich oil fields. Russia, somebody did a bombing in a Russian military base in Syria, killing dozens of Russian generals. This happened Sunday afternoon. We heard nothing about it until Thursday. But on Tuesday, Vladimir Putin made a statement which seemed to be out of character when he said, if Turkey and Saudi Arabia and their coalition, if they invade Syria, I will use tactical nukes against Turkey. And then 2 days later, we find out about this explosion of these generals. Mike, my first question to you, can you give us an understanding what military movements are going on right now? And then we'll talk about why.
Okay, let's look at, if we look at Syria and what's actually happening in Syria, you have rebel-controlled territory to the northwest, right? You have Hezbollah there in the south, near Lebanon. Actually, they're deeply penetrated in Lebanon. You have ISIS, or ISIS, same thing. You have these guys in the north, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the Kurds bordering Turkey, right? And so you have these placements here. What has happened is Turkey has its partners right?
Yeah.
But Turkey hates. Turkey is just totally against what we have sided with, right? These YPG groups, the Kurds forces of which we're helping. Turkey can't stand them, and what they want to do is they want to begin to wipe out certain folks, which is why there will likely be a problem with the ceasefire. Pastor Paul, it's supposed to take place this weekend.
I know.
Just in case anybody
I don't
doesn't
think
know
it's
that.
going to.
But Turkey refuses to agree because of the forces that are embedded in Syria. And so Turkey has partnered with the U.S. Now, this is the real deal. It's the U.S. and Turkey, Saudi Arabia, parts of Jordan, places of Iraq, have all joined forces.
Yeah.
And then Russia came on the scene to prevent it. Russia is a brick wall in the face of anybody who would try to own Syria, right?
Right.
And so Russia has its forces, which, by the way, we have our forces there too, but Russia has its forces. And Erdogan is trying to, actually, Jordan is not innocent. I have to tell everybody this. Jordan is by no means innocent. And what they're trying to do is it's really a land grab. It's not about the refugees either. That's a ruse. That's something that's hardly real. People are dying. Children are dying. But they have been forced into regions where ISIS was, and then they purposely let ISIS begin to come into these places to cause the world to look at this as a humanitarian disaster so that they could actually begin to move people for a reason. And what they plan to do is I would say a tactical nuke will eventually be used, in truth, due to the fact that there's going to be no consensus there. But the main objective is to control Syria, not because of Syria's richness, but because it's a gateway to both Iraq and a tactical movement against Saudi Arabia and the other oil fields. So Turkey is sided with the U.S. and they're saying, no, they can't do this because we want it. Turkey wanted control of portions of Syria. You remember that, Pastor Paul?
Yeah, I do.
And Russia comes in and they stop it.
Yes.
Because it is their partner.
Yes.
Now the U.S. says, no, you can't do that, Russia. So we see, what we see is a proxy war escalating, and all the while this is happening, Israel is being suppressed so hard by policy. Right now, nobody's on Israel's
side. That's
Israel
right.
stands by itself right now. There are more and more incursions happening on the northern borders.
Yep.
And no one's paying attention. They're going to hand over Jerusalem. They are. And they're doing all of this prior to 2017. But as far as the ceasefire, whatever they announce, it's not going to hold.
It won't hold.
We have to deploy troops there, Pastor.
So do you think, okay, so are you saying that it won't hold? We know this. We know we have a proxy war between Russia and America, and that Syria is the prize for a lot of reasons, and Russia and Israel can see armies all around them, which was prophesied by Jesus in the Bible. When you see the armies compassing Jerusalem, know that that those things were written shall come to pass. Know these are the days of vengeance. So, okay, so the peace, the truce, what they're calling a truce, supposed to start this weekend. It won't hold. We all know it. And you're saying America's going to have to send troops into Syria, which we know Turkey has been trying to persuade Obama to do it. Do you believe that we will do it, that Obama will do it? Will actually send, I hear, as much as 30,000 troops into Syria?
He's going to be forced to do it. Democrats don't like to go to war.
No,
they don't.
I know.
And, the Middle East knows this. But he's going to be forced to do it because of our allies and the assets that we have over there. So he's going to be forced. There's no way out of this. NATO has a deployment in tow, so they're ready. But it's very strategic. We can't forget about the Ukraine. We have to cover the Ukraine.
Right.
And then go into the Middle East. So we're looking at two areas now. The troop buildup in surrounding Ukrainian territory has been quite large and vast. There are lots of assets over there, right? Because Putin can't do what he wants to do unless the Ukraine has been secured portions of it. They need that strategically. They have to have it. They're not going to stop until they get it. And they have been working toward that. It's not been peaceful in the Ukraine. It's been strange things happening there.
Now, here's a
what
question.
You're seeing is a tactical positioning.
So that's what's going on. There's a lot of tactical positioning, a lot of military movement. Everybody's getting in position not only for an offensive but a defensive maneuver when an offensive movement takes place. I want to ask a question. What is a tactical nuke strike? What is the difference from a tactical nuke and a nuke? Maybe is it the size of the nuke? Is it the location of where it is sent? Is it both? Help us understand when Putin says.
No, it's the yield.
Okay, talk to me about it. You mean
That's
the
yield.
You're talking about collateral damage?
Well, right. A tactical nuke is not going to have that. Well, all of them are bad, but a tactical nuke, it doesn't have that much of a radioactive emission. That's going to linger. On contrary to some of the other weapons that were used, the large yield nuclear devices, of which nobody wants to use, because if one of those is fired, the whole world suffers. See, if anybody fires on the ground a nuclear warhead, not a tac nuke, but a nuclear warhead, eventually the entire world will suffer. That's like Fukushima in the air, uncontained, and it's not good because the jet stream will carry that radiation all over the place.
Right.
A tactical nuke is much smaller. It's very different. The yield is different. And the radioactive, any collateral damage, as you said, is much more minute compared to a ICBM with a nuclear warhead on there.
Okay.
So it's, and we have them too. They can fit on the tips of the Patriot missile systems and various other missile systems that we have. So if he launches a tactical nuke, though, here's the problem. You're looking at a nuclear, this Syria, Turkey, Israel, and various portions of them. I'm not going to name the rest because they're contested lands, or but they have nuclear capabilities. Turkey has our air defense capabilities. If Putin tries to launch anything, they can certainly shoot it down with the Patriot missile systems. And our guys are still in Turkey. I
know. We still got, I know.
They're still in Turkey.
So this proxy war that we're talking about, these Russian generals that were just killed Sunday in a Russian military camp, whom apparently they let some of the locals in. I was asking my son Brock about it, and he goes, it had to be the locals. They come, Paul, he says to me, Dad, they gain your trust. They're the locals. They gain the trust of the military personnel that's in the area. They do what you want. They follow orders. We gain their trust. We even bring them in and train them and make them part of the troops with us. And then all of a sudden one day they turn on you. They were like a virus that was being planted. And he said that's why he told me. He said when he was in Afghanistan for a year, he said never turn my back on one ever. I slept with one eye open when I was with them because I'm not trusting anyone that doesn't have a flag that has an American flag on his sleeve. I'm not trusting them. Maybe the Canadians and some of our other partners, but I'm not trusting these guys. And of course, we know we've lost several hundred U.S. soldiers have died over the last 13 years from Afghanistan or Iraqi soldiers who turned on us. So something happened there that caused all these Russian generals to die. It's a proxy war. Well, here's what I found out. The two rebel groups that did this are funded by the United States. We're not only funding the Free Syrian Army, we're backing several radical Islamic rebel groups that are fighting against Assad's army. So this was a direct hit from America through proxy. You got to know that it ratcheted everything up a couple notches, and it could come back the other way.
Yeah, I agree with your son, too. You really can't trust those guys over there. You can't fight a faith. You can't do that. You
No.
can't fight a faith. Ultimately, they're going to believe in their faith, and they will be who they are based on their faith. And so, and regarding your other comment, yes, it's unavoidable now, Pastor. But we're going to be drawn into war. Now, here's something I never thought I would say or have to really get into, but with all the various listeners out there, Pastor, this year is twofold. Number one, there are going to be very large tensions in the Middle East. And I continue to tell people they're going to behold something very horrific in the Middle East, because Saudi Arabia right now is going to be gone. It will just be gone. The unfortunate part about that is this is not, people have been conditioned so much to hearing war, they're not taking this seriously.
Right.
And they really should pray.
Are you
that
serious?
the Father's will happen in the Middle East, because this is not a joking matter. In fact, Pastor Paul, it is. Listen how serious this is. And, this is just me, but I have to walk away. I have to walk away now. There's no way I can stay in certain capacities. I can't do it from this day out. Everything is changing, and I'm walking away. I have to walk away. Everything is changing.
Okay, now
and it's going to become quite serious.
Okay, now 2 things here. I'm going to ask you what that means. You got to walk away in just a second. But first, you just said there won't be a Saudi Arabia. Now, when I was in Israel, I met with a guy by the name, and most of you may know him now, Avi Lipkin. Avi Lipkin, of course, is pretty well known. He says to me, there will be a war, Sunni Shiite war. They're going to blow up the Black Stone in Mecca. The Shiites will blow up the Black Stone in Mecca to take the power from the Sunnis, and that faith that the Black Stone holds this power. And I scratch my head and say, man, that's just an insane thought. Now you're saying, Paul or Pastor, listen to me, Saudi Arabia will not exist. I mean, what are you? When do you see that happening? You're saying, is it because of a Sunni Shiite war? Are you talking World War III?
The destabilization in the Middle East right now it's going to escalate beyond control, and there will not be a Saudi Arabia. Tactical nukes will be used, more than one. That people can contest that, but I have no time to debate with anybody concerning in that regard. I just have to take action. But no, it's not going to be there, and you're going to have a dominant force of Islam to begin to surface and work with Russia. Now, you have to keep in mind, I know people have their opinions of different nations.
Right.
But right now, Russia is working with who? Islamic individuals.
Yeah, Iran.
And it's going to begin to grow.
Yeah.
And the reason why, Pastor Paul, is because Russia somewhat put itself in a bad position, because Moscow, right, can be under instant threat, right?
Yeah.
So there will be escalated attacks. If I'm right about this, here's what people will see. We will have troop deployments after something happens in the UK and after the turmoil in Europe is beyond control. Then we send the troops in. By that time, a coalition force will have been united in the Middle East, and something will happen in Israel concerning Jerusalem. And Saudi Arabia is going to be just gone. Jordan will then begin to have to take sides. And of course, the Iraq territory will become Iranian territory, because right now they're paying, they have all this infusion of money, and what they're doing is on a high degree, they're sponsoring terrorism against Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And it's really about to take hold.
It's all about Jerusalem
really
in the end.
Pick up.
It's all about Jerusalem in the end.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's what the Bible says, and it's the timepiece of God. There's no question. It's all about Jerusalem in the end. There'll be a lot of bloodshed, a lot of killing. The Bible's leading us to the ultimate battle of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38:39. We also know there's it's prophesied there about some type of a coalition built against Israel. Annihilation is even spoken, and that's in Psalms 83. And then when we go to Ezekiel 12, we know it says that the city of Jerusalem will become a cup of trembling, a burdensome stone to all people. And then what happens? Zechariah 14, the prophet tells us Jerusalem comes under attack to the point that half the city looks like it's going to fall, and the houses are rifled, the women are ravished, and it doesn't look good. Now, all of these things are in our Old Testament prophecies, and we can see they're building, and it's like a pressure cooker. I mean, it's building, Mike. It's building. There's no doubt about it. I mean, this is okay. One more thing.
2017 is the target date.
2017, you're bringing up 303 days away from the second wave of energy, and you're also bringing up, that's this year. That would be this year, sometime in December. And then you're bringing up 2017 target date. Things are going to get now. Here's a question: does it matter to the Russians? Does it matter to the Muslims of the Middle East who the next president is? Does it matter who it is? Does it change their strategy?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm so glad you asked that. Everybody in the world knows when a Democrat's in power that the U.S. will not go to war.
Right.
That they do everything through diplomacy.
Right.
Right. So when a Democrat is in power, the Middle East has time to devise whatever they devise. When a Republican comes into power, there's a threat. Now, they take this as a threat when the U.S. has a Republican president. They know that that Republican president will likely commit troops to combat. Right?
Right.
So here's what we see happening also. As this election year continues to go forward, if it looks like a Republican is going to win, right?
Right.
If it looks like a Republican is going to win, the Middle East is going to, ISIS will triple the speed at which they're doing things. Iran will triple its speed. North Korea is going to triple its speed. You have all the enemies of the U.S. and all these forces of horror in the globe. They're going to triple what they're doing. And they're going to be allied and prematurely begin to do everything they had planned to do, because they're watching this election closely. They've heard the people speak, but they know about the Republicans. And they know that when a Republican comes into power, they have to execute prematurely what they have to do. Now, this poses an issue. It does, a security risk in the country. And because if it looks that way, they're going to have to double up on security within the United States on the borders and everywhere else. We're going to have to really begin to change the demographic of the Middle East concerning our troops and everybody else. Everything will speed up faster.
Yep.
If a Republican is elected, and I would say this, the people of the U.S., they certainly don't want any Washington insiders, right? They don't want that.
They're tired of that. They're tired of
they
that.
Just don't want it.
They don't want that no more.
But you have Congress now backing Donald Trump. Are you aware of this? There are more members in Congress, right?
Yep.
In the Senate that are backing Donald Trump. They want him in power.
Yep.
They want him in power.
Yep.
But it's only a fraction. The reason why is because Donald Trump's a billionaire. He knows the ins and outs of what's happening. He also poses a threat. He poses a threat to certain organizations who may not want him in power.
Right.
So they're very dirty and they're very sneaky.
Right.
And he certainly needs the prayers from the Christian. Whether Donald Trump is Christian or not, the guy needs prayer because he's in a very dangerous.
Well,
state.
he's he professes Christianity. All right. Let's you know that. But at the same time, the pressure that's going to be on him coming from every different direction will be so enormous that I don't think any one of us, and there's 1,100 people live with us on YouTube today. That's an all-time high. And something like way over 800 on new live streams. So this is a very interesting subject we're on. Not only the asteroid TX68, but what's about to take place. And you can see it ratcheting up in a big way. But the pressure is so enormous on him or whoever might be the nominee from the Republican Party, we'll say, because the hatred of the factions that feel that they're going to lose their grip, the organizations that have been working feverishly to alter our culture of America, the liberal view, the core curriculum, a ton of stuff is going to feel threatened. And then the enemies of America, as you say, are going to feel threatened and are going to have to exponentially expedite their plans, and they're going to take risk, and it's going to get ugly. And he does need our prayers more than probably anything I could ever say. He would be a target for assassination, no question. But more than that, I think just the pure pressure on the human body, the human soul, the human mind. He doesn't even know what he's getting ready to feel and what's going to come upon him when the knowledge gets fully revealed. And so anyone that gets in that position is going to be under a ton of stress. And we need to pray for whoever will be our next commander-in-chief. It's going to be an amazing situation. In 2017, you keep talking about it. Something may really break loose not long after the inauguration. I mean, seriously, it may not be. Mike, I'm going to give you a final words here. We're running out of time. I wish we just had like 6 hours and we just kept going. I mean, it would be unreal. I mean, but at this point, you said, I'm just going to have to walk away. I'm just going to have to walk away. What do you mean by that, Mike?
Well, Pastor, in 2017, there's a consolidation of faith announcement that will be made in 2017. In 2017, it is going to be mandatory that soldiers comply to something in the armed forces. Also in 2017, the demographic of America is going to change. I can't, but I have to have a clear conscience towards my Father in heaven, because I'm, when I gave my life to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, there's no way I'm going to be part of a system that is slowly promoting Lucifer himself.
Right.
And that will be very apparent in 2017. So there's a portion of me that I will walk away from. I won't be affiliated anymore. And but as far as ministries and things go, I will continue, but the rest of it I have to walk away.
I understand.
Time is running out.
Yep.
And I can know the facts, and it's very difficult to share the facts.
I know.
But all I can say is that any playtime or time that a person thought they had, they need to stop that mindset and begin to take each and every day as the ultimate opportunity, because the future is certainly, it's not promised, and it's also uncertain. And so there will be no more secret oaths, for me or anything, because they're going to up the ante on those who are involved.
Right.
They are. They are. And I'm not taking there's a new oath. There are so many things that are happening, but in 2017, the consolidation of faith, when that speech is given, and then everybody will understand what I'm saying, their stomachs are going to sink. And believe me, it's going to be paraded by the entire world. This is a world speech.
I know.
On 2017. It's just not going to be good. It's going to make the stomach turn. And,
you can't
to do with Jerusalem also.
Yeah, you can't share. You can't go any further. You can't share. It's amazing. I think about this way. In your position, you have access to some information that the rest of the general public we don't have, and maybe that's a good thing for us. I can say this, in the spiritual world, for as far as I'm concerned, I can tell you God is revealing more and more and more spiritually to us, that and leading us. And there's things that sometimes I have to come out and preach about and say that's based on pure, just spiritual revelation. And then I find out later that from guys like you and others that it's absolutely on the money. It's what is happening without any knowledge of knowing it, but we can see it coming, or we just through the Spirit of God get revelation knowledge. And there's no question 2017 is going to be a year of implementation. And this is a year for America of decision. This is big time decision. Are we going to be one nation under God or not? It's coming. I don't know how it works exactly, but it's coming. And it's fascinating stuff. Mike, we're going to have you back soon. Hang in there. Appreciate you coming on, being with us today. It's a great broadcast.
God bless you, Pastor Paul. It's always a pleasure.
Amen. It's always. God bless.